takes place when I was 22 years old. I'd just gotten home from a long night of stocking shelves at my local grocery store. I worked the closing shift, so I usually got home around midnight. I shared a cheap apartment with my roommate Mark. We weren't in the best of neighborhoods, but I just felt lucky to have a place to live that wasn't my parents' basement. I threw my jacket on the coat rack next to the front door and walked into the kitchen to rummage through the fridge for something to eat. I had just pulled a frozen burrito out of the freezer when I noticed something weird. My bedroom door had been slightly open when I walked by the hallway. I know this doesn't sound strange at first, but I specifically remembered closing it that morning when I left for work. I like my privacy, so I always remember to shut my door when I leave for the day. I stepped back into the living room and looked down the hall. "Hello?" I called. There was just dead silence. Not wanting to let the fear get the better of me, I walked across the living room and flicked on the hallway light switch. "Mark, is that you?" I asked. Mark had always been a bit of an odd guy, so I couldn't help but think that maybe he was trying to play some sort of weird prank on me. Maybe waiting to jump out of my closet or something when I entered my room. When I finally got to the bedroom door, I gently pushed it open. The light from the hallway illuminated a large portion of the room. I looked around, definitely feeling the creepy vibes. There was no one there, and nothing looked out of the ordinary. Just the usual. My twin bed, with my nightstand just to the left. I closed the door shut and walked back into the kitchen. I popped my dinner in the microwave and pressed the start button. While that was cooking, I turned on the television, ready to put on a scary movie to watch and relax. Suddenly, I heard a muffled thump coming from down the hall. At first, I thought it was the neighbors or something. They can be pretty loud sometimes, and it's not unusual to hear a loud bump in the night. But then it happened again, and this time I could tell for sure it was coming from down the hall. "Mark," I called once more. The microwave beeped just then, and I nearly had a heart attack. "Yeah, sorry. Dropped something," I could hear him say through the door. I'll admit, I felt a little better knowing that Mark was home. I walked back into the kitchen to get my food, and that's when my phone vibrated in my pocket. It was a text message from Mark. "Hey, dude, running a little late here at work. Could you please leave the door unlocked for me?" My stomach dropped to the floor, and a chill ran down my spine. I texted back, "Wait, you're still at work?" He responded only a few seconds later, "Yeah, why?" At that moment, there was another noise from the hall, and I looked up. The silhouette of a large man was standing there, holding what appeared to be a butcher's knife. I turned and ran towards the front door, hearing the heavy clunk of the man's boots behind me. He wasn't running. Instead, it sounded like he was slowly walking, taking his time. I didn't stop to look back. I ran down the emergency staircase and out into the parking lot where I called the cops. The cops showed up just a few minutes later. They went upstairs and searched my apartment, but they said they didn't find anyone. This incident is still fresh in my memory, and shivers run down my spine every time I think about that night. This happened when I was 14 and 17 at the moment, and still linger on the memory. I was home alone that night as my mom was working an overnight shift, and my older brother didn't live at home at the time, so therefore I had the house to myself. I'd say it was maybe 9 or 9:30 p.m., and I was in my room working on homework and listening to music with my headphones in, loud enough to where I really couldn't hear things. I remember for a fact that all of the doors were locked, and I stayed home alone pretty often, so I didn't have a reason to worry. maybe an hour later, I decided to take my headphones out and take a break from homework. I heard noises in my kitchen and footsteps walking around downstairs, which was odd because my mum wasn't supposed to be home until 7 a.m. the next morning. But she could have taken an early night for whatever reason. But just to make sure, I locked my bedroom door and texted her, asking if she came home. It took her about 10 minutes to respond, but when she did, she said no, she was still at work, and why I asked. At that point, I was freaking out, because my mum and brother are the only ones with keys into the house, and myself, of course. So I decided to text my brother. Sure enough, he said no, he wasn't in the house. So I told both him and my mom about the situation. My brother wasn't far from the house, so he said he would be there soon and to call the cops. As I was trying to find a hiding spot in my room with my phone to call the police, I heard my name called from downstairs. That got me thinking, did whoever was in the house know me personally? A family friend, maybe? I didn't respond out of fear of who knew my name and was calling it, and I didn't recognize the voice. I called the cops and was on the phone with them when my name was called again, followed by, "I know you're up there." And I heard someone starting to walk up the stairs. Again, I didn't respond, but I was pure terrified. The police assured me they were on the way, and to stay put. I was still texting my brother while this was all happening EL. He informed me he was 5 minutes away. That's when I heard the front door slam. After I heard the door slam, about 5 minutes later, the police arrived and assured me it was them and that I could come out. Shortly after, my brother arrived back home. The police looked around the property and all over the house, but there was no trace of whomever was once here. However, there was damage on the door and lock from being forged open and looked to be done by some sort of tool to pick the lock. Everything turned out okay, because nothing was taken, oddly enough. But the upsetting part is whomever was in my house wasn't found. From that night forward, though, we got cameras installed and got a better lock. This incident happened to me when I was 14 years old. It was a regular Tuesday night. My parents were away, and I had the house to myself. I was chilling on the couch, binge-watching a series, when I noticed something odd outside my living room window. The street was dimly lit, but I could make out a figure lurking near my neighbor's house. At first, I thought it might be one of their friends or a family member, someone they were expecting. But the longer I watched, the more uneasy I became. This person was just standing there, staring at their front door. It gave me the creeps, but being the rational person I am, I dismissed it as my imagination running wild. As the night progressed, I got up to grab a snack from the kitchen. That's when I heard a creak, a subtle noise that sent a chill down my spine. I froze. The front door was slightly ajar. Panic set in, and I immediately regretted not double-checking if I'd locked it. I hesitated, debating whether to investigate or call the police. But curiosity got the better of me, and against my better judgment, I tiptoed toward the door. It swung open with a soft groan, revealing an eerily quiet house. I heard a noise upstairs, like footsteps. My heart pounded as I realized someone was inside my home. Fear gripped me, but I forced myself to stay calm. I retreated to a closet, my breath caught in my throat, praying they wouldn't find me. From my hiding spot, I could hear the intruder moving through the rooms, searching for something. The tension was unbearable. I clutched my phone, ready to call for help, when I heard a noise from downstairs. It was a door slamming shut. I strained to listen, and my blood ran cold as I heard the unmistakable sound of a scream echoing through the night. My mind raced, and I realized the intruder hadn't found me but had moved on to my neighbor's house. Guilt and relief washed over me in equal measure. I couldn't believe the horrifying turn of events. I stayed hidden until I was sure it was safe, and then, with shaky hands, I called the police. When they arrived, I explained what had happened. The reality hit me like a ton of bricks when they went next door. My neighbor, a kind, elderly couple, had been brutally attacked. The scene was something out of a nightmare. It wasn't a random break-in. The intruder had specifically targeted me. The investigation unfolded, and the police caught the perpetrator. Turns out, he had a twisted motive and had mistaken my house for theirs. It's a chilling realization that I narrowly escaped a fate that befell my neighbors. The guilt still lingers, wondering if there was anything I could have done differently. The randomness of it all, the fact that a simple twist of fate saved my life that night, is a haunting thought. It's a reminder that danger can lurk in the most unexpected places, and sometimes survival is just a matter of luck. The night I narrowly avoided a killer, but couldn't prevent the tragedy that unfolded next door. Life can be stranger and scarier than any horror movie.